Hello, dear friends, and welcome to our podcast dedicated to sight reading through the lens of the historically informed performance practice. My name is Darina Blogina, and I have a very particular guest in front of me tonight. We are at the Music Academy, and we were sight reading some exciting pieces.
Hello, everyone. This is Jermaine Sprosse, historical keyboardist, fortepianist, clavicordist, music teacher, and lover of the early classical style and musical world and chamber music and everything that has to do with it.
Yes, I remember I've been to your concert some years ago, actually, like maybe 5 years ago or something like that, with my friend, and she was like quite an adult lady. That's how I discovered you. Actually, I knew you because you were studying at the Schola as well, I think before, and I have seen you around. And then this old lady, we were friends, and she was studying Russian with me. And then she invited me to your concert. And that's how I discovered your playing. And I was fascinated how emotional it is. And it was so touching because you were managing to play all this micro phrasing, as you were saying you're a lover of early classical music or classical music in general. So, and I was amazed. It contains indeed a lot of micro phrasing where you have every bar something new happening, and you were reacting in such a fresh and exciting way that I was like entirely eaten by your performance, and I was just astonished. And that's how I got to know you as a musician. And you are kind of also a legend because we are like communicating. I also play organ a little bit, and we're communicating in this organ group chats, and you're always Jermaine is the organist of that church. But could you please tell about the field of your interest? What are you focusing on mostly, and maybe about your activity?
Yeah, first of all, it's a big pleasure to be here, and that we found the time to record this, and it has been a dream of mine for quite some time to participate in this lovely podcast that I listen to with a lot of interest and pleasure since a long time. My main interest is, of course, music in general and also music teaching, but more particularly, more precisely, the keyboard music of the sons of Johann Bach and their stylistic surrounding, or let us say also their school, if you want to say so, which is especially the case with Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach and all those other composers that followed him and considered him like the big role model of all the time. And in the last couple of years, especially during the Corona period, I became particularly interested in Johann Christoph Friedrich Bach, the third son of Johann Sebastian Bach as a composer, and his keyboard music, because I understood at some moment that this music is really cool and almost no one plays it. And I started wondering why that is. So I learned most of his keyboard sonatas, it's like between 20 and 30, and single pieces, and worked on it a lot, played it for people, played it in concert, etc. pp. And finally decided I want to do a CD with a selection of keyboard pieces, which then last year I finally did, as probably the first one in this planet, as it seems.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell a bit about the CD and your preparation time on that, and where can we find this CD?
Well, firstly, it really needs to be precised or said that, it's kind of astonishing that it seems like that I've done the worldwide first album with...
Why do you think is that so?
Keyboard music of Johann Christoph Friedrich Bach. I don't know, frankly. I talked to a couple of colleagues, also colleagues that are very, very strong in that stylistic field. And the answers were sort of... gloomy, to say the least. Like, oh, yes, we looked at it. It wasn't that interesting. Or we looked at it, we quite didn't know what to do with it. And which is in a way understandable, because Johann Christoph Friedrich Bach's keyboard music, especially the mature works of the 1780s, they like belong to at least two, maybe three sort of different stylistic worlds, if you want to say so. And then I can understand that for certain colleagues, this is not, for certain musicians, this is not something really, easy to grab or make something out of. And that's exactly where I start getting interested.
Do you tell about these different styles that his heritage contains?
Well, first of all, there is quite a big connection to, of course, C.P.E. Bach, his elder half-brother, to whom he had a lifelong, very amicable relationship, as we know from letters. But then there's also Johann Christian Bach, his younger full brother, if you want to say so, whose music also at a certain point in the late 1770s started to strongly influence him and also influence a certain group of keyboard sonatas and chamber music also with keyboard. But then there are also, let us say, sort of more individual and experimental sonatas that I have not yet recorded on this album. I hope I can do it on a volume 2 maybe. That belong to no real sonata groups in that sense and also are not written by him like leichte Sonaten, easy sonatas. So clearly in those cases not indicated for the well-educated amateurs that became more and more in his lifetime, but more pieces that he probably wrote for himself or thought about publishing and also published but also did not publish, and that have a bigger degree of experimental and also technically advanced things in them, and are also in longer dimensions, etc. So that is very interesting for me. Yeah.
And what do we know about this composer? Where did he live? And maybe we could tell that for our listeners that never discovered this wonderful composer yet.
Yes, with pleasure. First of all, Johann Christoph Friedrich Bach shares the year of birth with a very, very, very famous other composer of his time, Joseph Haydn. So he's also born in 1732.
That's what I thought when we played the piece.
1732. And lived until 1795, which means that he overlived, I don't know if that's the right word in English, his brothers by quite some years, even C.P.E. Bach by 7 years almost. In his first, I think, 17 years of life, he was in Leipzig, in his father's house, with whom he also studied, of course. Possibly also was part-time a trainee of Willem Friedemann and of Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach. So I think that was really like one circle that worked a lot together. So it was kind of normal that the elder brothers also taught the younger ones if they were in the house. If not, then of course not. And then at the age of 17, in 1749, Johann Christoph Friedrich Bach already got his major position at the Bückeburg court in northwestern Germany. Wonderful castle. I visited a couple of months ago. Really beautiful. And at that place, he remained until his death in 1795. So, yeah, he stayed there for, I think, 46 years. It's incredible.
So he was responsible for the music that was performed at the court, and he was composing for that court.
He was composing for the court. He was firstly, I think, something like prime violinist in the orchestra or something, yeah? And then later, I believe in the 1770s, if I'm not mistaken, he became Konzertmeister, which nowadays would be like the prime violin player, but at his time, as sources tell us, was like the orchestra leader, so the conductor. Whether that also included instrumental playing automatically, I must say I don't know, but I believe it. I believe it. It's very likely that he led the orchestra from the harpsichord, or maybe even played the violin. I'm not sure about it.
Well, talking about instruments, maybe we can now turn our sight to the sonata that we found to play together, and it's a sonata. Actually, it's written for flauto traverso or a violin, violoncello, and a keyboard instrument, probably fortepiano. Do you know for which kind of instrument exactly was it written?
It's not easy to answer, frankly speaking. I mean, writing cembalo as the main keyboard instrument was something quite normal at the time. And also, performance practically, we know that at the court there were several harpsichords in use, so it is absolutely possible that this was a composition also for the court, that he accompanied or played on the harpsichord with the major flute player of his orchestra. It's possible. But it's also imaginable due to the fact that I think it's written more closely to 1790 than to 1780, that it has already been performed on a fortepiano of the time, or even on a square piano, an English square piano, of which we know he owned one. So probably a square piano. It's not exactly written in the source, but which also, if the flute has a very warm and refined sound, can be a superb combination. I was actually having that in mind with Darina today to record our piece on an original Clementi square piano with the flute. Was my idea for today, which would have been a very nice mélange of sounds and colors.
Yeah, well, in case of 415, of the tuning in 415, that would have been a Baroque flute, which is also fine, no problem. I just don't know. I think at that time, they were using also Baroque flutes and classical flutes in 430 because, they look the same. Classical flutes in 430 with one key, they look the same as Baroque flutes, but the shape inside is a bit different. So like the bore is a bit different, and that's why the sound, of course it affects the sound, and it can sound a bit like different. But yeah, I totally agree. So today we actually played it in 430, and I used my keyed flute, which is fine, and I think it works. And what do you think about the style of this andante that we have played? And have you played this piece before? Have you looked at it, and how? Because for me, it was an impression that was like so natural for you to play it with all these, let's say, diminutions in the right hand part.
It's clearly the slow movement that now we recorded that sort of shows when more or less it has been written. Because it is a very similar style to also a late cello sonata with forte piano from 1789. And it is very particular because it has those very, very long phrasings, extremely cantabile, both in the flute part and the right hand of the piano. And at the same time, you have the left hand of the piano player, which is often very low, so very deep, so in a very sonore and full and almost orchestral range. Yeah? And that gives a feeling of great fulfillingness and a very rich and profound sound. At the same time, looking for piano and pianissimo registers of the most refined nature possible. So I think this is the kind of experimental world that we find him in after 1785, close to 1790. Also in certain of the solo keyboard works we find that.
And what do we know about ornaments and how to perform that at that period of time when it was kind of going all a bit wild at the end of the century?
Yeah, difficult. Also the question, to which degree the idea of ornamented repeats is still the thing to do. Yeah, I don't find it a very easy question. At the same time, when I look at sources like the Klavierschule from Daniel Gottlob Türk, the famous big Klavierschule from exactly that time, 1789, we find for the keyboard player clear indications how to make varied or ornamented repeats. Of course, he says, like, don't do too much, don't waste or destroy the piece, always be serving the piece and the effect and the general idea. But he shows also quite a liberate and inspired degree of working with the composed material. And then I also know Friedrich Wilhelm Rust, another composer of that time, that made heavily ornamented repeats in especially one keyboard sonata. So there are enough sources that tell us, like, do it, but like in all the things we do it with taste and really think of what you do and how much and to which degree. And as I said before, whether you stay in the service of the piece or whether you just jam around. I don't think that's the idea. And then also, if we talk for just one moment about aesthetics and touch and an idea of sound for that music. So what I try to find is, the biggest possible range of dynamic and of colors and of micro and inner phrasing, as you put out before. And very helpful for that is a minimal, if not quasi non-existent, use of the knee or whatever pedal we may have, and really try to make everything with the fingers and their most differentiated touch and usage. Why? Because we have to imagine that there was maybe not an advanced Walter or Stein or other big fortepianos with knee pedals where you can constantly change from sustain or no sustain if you want. But a square fortepiano of that time, and as I said before, he probably had such a thing that he brought from England, most likely didn't have that option of a well, certainly not a knee pedal, but also a foot pedal. So you would have something, you would have a manual, in German we say a Handzug, like a manual stop, and it activates or it loosens the dampers, or when you deactivate it, they fall back, but you never had that constant possibility of having sustain or no sustain. So I think here it is very helpful to really train the fingers to do all the pedaling and all the microscopic phrasing that you like. And I believe that combines very well also with the way the flute or even also a violin plays. That's what I believe.
Yeah, for me it was also an interesting combination in this piece of an aria. And I was immediately thinking about what you have said before, that he was working with orchestras and maybe for some performances that he was creating for the court. And also maybe it has something to do with this accompanied sonata style where an instrument will be an accompanying tool for the fortepiano. And this tradition is quite interesting for me, but of course it flourished much later with like Hummel, where he writes like a full fortepiano sonata and the flute is just like an addition, or with De Vienne. In France, I think it was quite popular with, which was this guy, Johann also, and anyways, there was like a full workshop on that in Paris at the atelier of this romantic fortepiano. And I was thinking maybe like the beginning of the style you could already find here, even in this sonata, because in the B part, I was feeling mostly that sometimes I was really just accompanying your part.
Mm-hmm. But then also there are long passages where, especially when the main theme is being played or sung by the flute as an arioso, where I accompany and make the harmonic fillings, like a sort of late form of basso continuo, written out basso continuo. There's also some possible way to look at it. Huh? But always trying to feed and support the cantabile action of the flute, so to say. And not just covering it, but more
uncovering.
Being under it, being with it, being sometimes above it, but constantly in a very conscious and clear attempt of dialogue.
Yeah, very interesting experience. Thanks for bringing this piece. It was amazing. But maybe coming back to your CD, maybe you could tell how you started working on that and how you discovered this collection of sonatas that you have recorded and why you decided to record them.
Oh, so many questions. Which makes me remember another one you asked before, Darina, and I didn't answer it. Where do we find the CD?
Yes.
Of course, we find it on Spotify, on high-res audio. You can find the physical examples in mostly all the shops that I know. Of course, in my private apartment too. If you want to buy one, please contact me.
Yes.
It has been published by Prospero Classical in October 2023. So rather recently. how to make the choice of such a recital program of 80 minutes. Sort of impossible, if I may say so. And for those who are interested, I'm going to say the truth. The final decision of which pieces come onto that CD happened during the recording.
Oh, really? Wow,
Yes.
that's nice.
Well, it was not so nice for me and my team in Italy. Kisses to you guys. You're just amazing. I love you. Best team ever. Huh?
Yeah, so it's this Prospero label. They have recorded.
The Prospero label, they took it, but we recorded it with a team in Italy, where also the instrument is, and I go every year to play and to teach.
So you recorded in Italy and
close to Rome.
Yeah. What kind of instrument?
On an original Hasselmann Viennese piano from 1800, almost not restored, just restored, just the main things. Super full of colors and dynamic and every register has really its own face, so to say, its own character. Fabulous.
And so you have decided on the pieces during this recording, actually.
Yeah, I mean, what I did before, and that also has to do with what I mentioned before, volume 2, that I'm strongly considering to do, is that I quasi prepared 2 recital programs. So I quasi had enough music for 2 CDs ready. Yeah. And then, I decided. Also, I had primarily the idea to make a clavichord recording because I really believe that some of the pieces of Friedrich Bach, and I also make the experience as a player, are fabulous on clavichord. My goodness.
Yeah, that's the favorite instrument of C.P. Bach.
Of C.P. Bach. In case of Johann Christoph Friedrich Bach, we do not have much knowledge about him as a clavichord player, except one source where he is mentioned together with Friedemann Bach as the big clavichord players of the time. So that kind of made me curious. And then we also have certain places in late slow movements that I've written in a very clavichordistic texture, also with appoggiati, so these small spots that indicate to make a very special, profound, and it's just a very clavichordistic thing that I would have to show.
It's like a vibrato on a keyboard instrument.
That would be a Bebung. No, it doesn't go that far, but it is an effect that really is for the clavichord. And
I think they were describing that for the flute. It's the same kind of thing that all the flute players, they're wondering how to make this vibrato. Is it diaphragm vibrato kind of, but it's not like a throat like it's always a discussion about this type of, and I think it's maybe somewhat similar with this clavichord technique.
The appoggiato. It's possible. I mean, it's called das Tragen der Töne, and it mostly happens on repeated notes, but not only.
Exactly.
It's very interesting. And in German, we would say that those notes, they get a certain Nachdruck, an after pressure. And maybe one day we're going to do a small video, Darina.
Yes,
if you're I'm going to show that on one of my instruments. It's a superb effect, really. But getting back to Johann Christoph Friedrich Bach. So I was thinking about clavichord now. And then finally I decided, no, I'm going to make a choice of late pieces on the forte piano and spare the clavichord maybe for a second volume. Yeah, and then I just studied pieces and programmed and reprogrammed and threw everything into the dustbin and made another program and drove my friends and colleagues crazy, and my partner, I love you, but you had to go through that. And then I just thought, okay, now I do an 80-minute disc and I try to show as much as different stylistic phases and different types of effects and also different genres of keyboard pieces as possible on that disc.
And how did you come to the concept, to this exactly concept of, let's say, stylistic diversity? Because I think it's really not, somehow for me, I'm thinking about that, it's not easy to make a decision on a concept when you are creating a CD, because it's a lot of work when you decide about it. Could you tell about this kind of work that you have done?
Yeah. Well, firstly, I could have made myself a very easy job and just take one of his groups of 6 sonatas and just record 6 sonatas, 6 easy sonatas.
For the first time that nobody has never recorded.
And I was, but that would have not been very convincing in my opinion, because there were always some pieces of extraordinary quality or extraordinarily appealing to me personally. Me. I have other colleagues who would probably vote for other pieces in their CD. So, but just speaking about myself. And then I thought, no, this is the wrong way. I need the best things of every group of sonatas he did and combine them.
So it was not like full sonatas, but you would have taken one movement from that sonata and another, like how it is.
Yeah, that would be the most extreme concept for a CD that I was also considering. I did that for one single movement, the A minor sonatina's first movement, because it's absolutely an outstanding. So I took that away from the rest of the sonata and presented it as a single piece. But other than that, complete sonatas, of course. But those where I considered all the three movements of good quality and really interesting and just sparkling and dazzling enough to program.
Yeah, I'm also thinking about this, like recording sonatas. Actually, I must say, I kind of have a mixed feeling about that. I try to consider nowadays the reality that people really, they have TikTok and whatever, and they are concentrated on very short clips. And somehow, CD recordings in general, why do we do them as artists? That's a big question.
It's a good question. It's an absolutely valid and
yes,
question.
Yeah, and that's why I'm thinking, like, would sonatas as full would be a convincing decision to go for, or it should be like separate pieces? How do you personally think about, what do you think about this big topic?
It's an absolutely fantastic question. And I think I want/need all of it. Meaning, I want entire sonatas as a whole story, as a whole thing, but I also want small singular pieces that are just dancing and entertaining and have this little wow bonbon thing. And I have all that on my album. So I have grave, sincere, big sonatas from this composer, but also very small dances, like the most miniatures that he wrote. And I think that variety then, also sonatas, single pieces, variations in the end, the famous A vous dirai-je maman variations. So all of that combined in one program, in my opinion, makes it interesting and also gives the chance for the listener to train his long-term concentration, but also be entertained enough by variety, just on a formal aspect already. Yeah.
And what do you think in general about this issue or question, let's say, of nowadays? Why are we recording CDs as artists? Do we need to record like physical CDs, or do we need to record videos instead, like YouTube videos to promote ourselves?
Repeating myself, I think we need it all.
But it's quite, like you have done it now, it's quite an expensive and challenging work.
Yes, absolutely.
You invest so much.
You invest and also now promoting it and looking for good concerts with the program, because I so love this music, you have no idea. I really do. As I said recently to a friend of mine, it's an unpaid 50% job at least, maybe even 60.
More,
maybe,
I'm sure.
Maybe probably more.
As a creator.
As a creator, and frankly speaking, the amount of hours I spend just on editing is something that no one I know of all my colleagues has done or would do.
So you were editing by yourself as well?
Yes, over 3 months, without break.
Oh wow! Mastering with the guy from the label, or
with the sound engineer from Italy, who was the previous owner of that instrument. And a piano professor in Italy. And we became friends and we decided to do this. Yeah.
So how much time did it take you to record the entire CD with all these adventures on the way?
And all the ornamented repeats and all the improvisation moments and the fantasia that I composed 2 days before.
Oh my God.
Composed 2 days before the recording. 4 days for 82 minutes of music. Not so bad.
Great. 4 days.
Including
Incredible.
crisis and screaming around because the instrument didn't hold the tuning or it was hot. I mean, we had 40.5 degrees. It was in summer.
Yes.
Insane. And I remember Romeo, who is a friend of mine and owns the instrument, at some point says, "It's enough now. I'm tired. The instrument is tired. Let's go and eat pasta."
That's great. Immediately you can do that really
which then we did. And we had already, I remember, everything sort of in the box. And then we had half a day more. And I'm so happy about it because I think then I recorded the best moments.
Mm-hmm. When you were already relaxed.
Yes, on that extra day. Yeah. So that's something I would do, if I may speak about it frankly.
That's a good strategy.
Every CD I'm ever going to record in this life, probably not many anymore, but some I want to do, at least a fourth, ideally even maybe a fifth day, but a fourth day certainly.
Great.
To re-record pieces.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good strategy to record everything. And then when you have free time left, you can really do some extra stuff on top of that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. If you find your project, the thing that you absolutely feel, I need to do this. And especially for me, a motivation, if it's a composer that hasn't been recorded yet. And of a name of Bach, I mean, we have to imagine that. How is that? This is so incredible that I don't know what to say. Like I'm the first one. I mean, it's not about being proud about myself, but I'm the first one to have recorded Johann Christoph Friedrich Bach. This is just unbelievable. And that was a strong motivation to say, okay, the CD, even if it's difficult to sell and if it's a very questionable thing in general, I do it.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about reappropriation of the repertoire when we record the same Bach sonatas over and over again, or the same operas, or things that have been recorded 1,000 times by different artists?
Yeah.
What to do with that?
Again, I can only speak for myself. Yeah. And for me, this may sound a little radical. It's just not an option. Unless I would find something that convinces me so much and that I'm so sure about, I have to add something valuable to this music that I need to do it. But mostly I would say, for me personally, no. If I do an album, then it, for the major part of it, should be something that has not been done yet. Because for me, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And with Johann Christoph Friedrich Bach, as I said, I really love his music and I love to combine it in concerts with his brothers. You have no idea how fantastic that is. I just want to share that with the world and with people, because it's really, come on, it's really damn good music, and it's worth to bring to the world and show it, and that's an incredibly strong motivation for me. Darina, if I may, you mentioned something of great importance. I think you mentioned the short period of attention of people, and the question, does that go well together with the CD nowadays, if I understood you correctly? I mean, first of all, we can all listen to just single tracks, of course. We can we can do that on the CD, but also on Spotify and on all the possibilities we have. But then I believe it is also worth to just train our attention time, no? I think it's super important. And when I speak to older people, like my students and friends, and also like clients of mine who buy these albums and who absolutely want them, I observe that very often they have a great capacity to stay interested. Yeah. So I have, for example, one of my eldest private students, she's 75. She told me that she listened to the CD entirely, and she could even remember pretty exactly what happened in which sonata and why she found it convincing, and what it meant to her when she listened to it. And she was so fond of the whole program, the sonatas, the way they were grouped and everything. And that gave me really some hope. I was thinking, okay.
Yeah, no, because there was a question about that.
Yeah.
In this early music summit, should we record more CDs? Or like as younger groups they do now, they just make beautiful videos. But clearly, like maybe you have a different motivation to create this content because like really it's the very first experience of recording those pieces, and clearly you need a full picture of what it is. And of course, with a short video clip, that would not be maybe, although it would be great to have 80 minutes film. But it's another level of expenses.
Absolutely. And difficulty and stress also maybe. Yeah. So I think when it's really about just getting concerts, then I'm quite sure that an investment in good short video clips is worth it. It was, frankly speaking, never something that interested me much. And has not changed until today. And especially when I think about finally then in the last minute programming this CD, there was this moment, and I think that has a lot to do with what we talk about now, when all the pieces I chose fell into place, then I knew exactly which sonata comes at which place, which singular piece, and the whole thing at some moment was like a puzzle where all the pieces fitted. And that moment, I remember, gave me such a feeling of satisfaction and of conviction also of what I did, that had someone told me, oh, cut out this sonata or this movement or just make parts of it, I would have refused because it needs it all.
And do you have like a dramaturgy throughout the program? How do you build that?
I was starting with, in my opinion, the most expressively strong sonata in late sonata in A major that is really like a reference to C.P. Bach, who, if I'm not completely mistaken, just died a little bit before when he composed those pieces. A really strong sonata in many aspects. And then afterwards something more like improvisation, the Fantasia, then the Fuga, and the more joyful Johann Christian Bach / Haydn-esque sonata. And then something more that shows him from a also pedagogical view, the C major sonata, opening a series of sonatas for the Princess, who also was his student, where he worked. Then the A minor sonatina, something very emotional and almost a bit pre-romantic. And then the strong orchestral D major sonata, and then some dances, and in the end, the beautiful A vous dirai-je maman variations, maybe the piece that he's most known for, and that also other famous pianists already recorded. And that all together for me, as I said, was at some moment so convincing and perfect that I just knew, like, that's it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. I mean, that's a super positive kind of effect that you have discovered, and I'm glad that you're on that trip. And please join Jermaine's CD and his beautiful positive mood, and find his CD everywhere. Download and listen and enjoy. Thank you very much, Jermaine. It was a great conversation. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Darina, for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.